Hello, everybody. This is Rule of Two, and I'm here with Weather Control, and we're on our second track breakdown for our song Temple. Um, we're just going to go over all the different elements. There's a lot of layering, ambience, and it's just a giant mess, but it's well organized, so I think it'll be good.
165 tracks. It is a mess. Some would say it's definitely a lot of stuff, but it's color coded, so that definitely adds a lot to the overall sound of the track for sure.
Phenomenal.
So yeah, let's just get right into it. I'm gonna kind of break it down layer by layer. I'm just starting out with the couple of pads I have right here. And one is just a massive patch that I made, and the other is a EXS24 pad. And the massive lead just sounds like this, comes in at the very beginning. Definitely pretty quiet and spooky for sure. Even has a little bit of pitch bend on this second hit, as you can see right here. It also has a little pitch shifter on it, just adding a little bit of the octave above, giving it a little more character. And nothing really too interesting is going on with the other pad. It also has some pitch bend on it. Just sounds like this by itself. Again, there's a lot of background stuff in this track, as you can imagine, and definitely adds to overall ambience, little melodic things drifting in and out. And those kind of play throughout the track. Then, of course, we got the orchestral instruments all in this little group right here. Got some strings, spiccato strings courtesy of Spitfire. I can load them up real quick. Yeah, they're pretty nice sounding. And yeah, you can just play through some of those. In the beginning, they just sound like this by themselves. EQ'd a little bit, and then all the orchestral instruments are going to a bus where they have reverb, a little bit of EQ just to cut out some of the low end, and a little bit of compression. And the main reason for that is to make all the orchestral instruments sound like they're in the same space. Kind of makes them feel a little bit more natural. And yeah, this is what the spiccato strings look like by themselves. You can see there's a lot of variation in the velocity. That helps it sound more real, more human, not like I pulled it straight from a sample library. And then got some tubular bells and a choir, just and some horns as well. And these kind of add together to create this hit, if you will. Just sounds like that. The horns are also Spitfire. And then there's a little massive patch that actually may have been used in Wraith as well. Actually, now I think about it, I might find this same patch I made in the live tracks, but it just sounds like this by itself. Just kind of a cool synth layer to add to the orchestral parts. And next layer is the instruments. Kind of a sort of vague grouping. But it contains a lot of strings, a lot of bells, a sort of real sounding stuff that wasn't quite orchestral or really quite synth. That I wanted to group together to better process and also, of course, keep organized. And that starts off with these guys, just in the background. They also have a little pitch bend on them and are panning left and right. And actually, I can talk a little bit more about the bridge, which I actually play a little bit of that. The bridge is kind of a switch up from the other parts of the track, of course, and kind of this melodic breakdown, if you will, has a lot of bell sounds going on, which is where most of these instruments come in. Some of this is Logic stuff, other is Sculpture, some patches I made in Sculpture, like this guy, which is kind of the lead bell sound, if you will. And these definitely layer together pretty nicely. And another thing to know about these is that You can see here, if you look closely, this is looking at all the MIDI for the different bell sounds, and it's all a little slightly off. It's a little slightly humanized. Not all the hits are right on the grid, and that really does give it a human feel. Makes it a little bit more interesting, gives a little variance, because if it was all quantized just straight on, it would probably sound pretty unnatural. Probably wouldn't sound that real. And little bells going on here. This is kind of plays a little counter melody. That's also a sculpture patch, probably similar to the lead bells one. Some dulcimers come in the parts of the drop, and definitely during the bridge as well. I can hear those in context with the first drop. And that's a lot that's pretty far in the background, but it definitely adds that very Eastern vibe. Here's what they sound like by themselves. Then have a Erhu violin. I guess that's how you say that. I'm not really sure. I hope that's how you say it, so I don't sound dumb. And that sounds like this by itself. Very reverbed out, that plays leading up into the bridge. Definitely has a lot of ambience. And some of this, I think this is some you made actually. Well, or I think I made or I gave you the stems for it, and you kind of looped it in a cool way. This sort of looped, airy synth.
Oh, is this during the drop?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It plays pretty quietly in the drop, but again, adds a little bit of atmosphere.
A lot of the stuff that I did in this track was not like the bulk of it. It was more like, I guess like during the drop I did more, but like the whole bridge and everything, that was all weather control, and like mine was just really minute stuff, pretty much.
Yeah, though I think I had the initial idea that I sent you, which was my initial idea was mainly the bridge actually, which at the time, of course, wasn't a bridge. It was sort of like an idea, but I sent a rule of two, and he came up with like the main first drop and a lot of the main bass sounds, if you will, that are used in the drop. And when he sent it back to me, then I kind of started layering other stuff in.
Yeah, I don't know if you probably don't have it, but there was like the original thing that I sent back to you, like the drop, and it had like it sounded similar to how it is now, but then I ended up losing the project, so I had to remake all the sounds.
Oh yeah,
and they weren't as good as they were before, and I was really sad.
I definitely remember that. That was, yeah, it wasn't just like quite there. Like those first sounds were just like really, really good.
Yeah.
But I mean, it still turned out good.
Yeah, it still turned out pretty. I'm surprised I was able to remake that one triplet sound, because that was a lot of layering and it was a huge mess. I'm surprised I was able to recreate it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Anyway.
Yeah, going next down the list, we have big drums, which I think they just play a little bit before the drop on actually a little bit before both the drops. They just sound like this by themselves.
Did I send you that?
I don't think so. No.
No? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's again just to add to the orchestral sound. If you can have live strings and stuff going on, might as well have big drums going in the background. Some of these are also from Spitfire. Others are from 8 Dial with the Doles, and then I think these claps were bounced from a bunch of different clap samples I have. In addition to those, there's also another subgroup just for these Dole sounds, And these kind of act as a sort of natural background noise, if you will, at some points, and also a, a, a natural alternative to risers. Instead of using just white noise, there's also these dulls going on that are actually, I think these were some of the same ones that were used in Wraith as well. These sustained dull sounds that kind of build and rise. Let's see if I have any automation on. Yeah, I do have a little bit of automation kind of they're building up like you would with white noise or any other FX. Let's see, next one we have to talk about is percussion and cymbals. This is a pretty big group,
Oh yeah.
as you'd expect. But these really just do what you think, add some high frequency content, as well as like little bits of energy and rhythm. And a lot of them aren't, well, some of them are more traditional cymbals, but a lot of them are more foreign or Eastern sounding, which again adds to the overall feel of the track. I'll play some of them right for you. Got a little shaker going on as well. And there's a breath sound that pans back and forth that Rule 2 sent me. That's pretty cool. That's also grouped in with there,
Oh yeah.
or grouped in with them. Yeah, and also gotta have the wind chimes, of course, later in the later in the bridge. I had that in a lot of projects, even in stuff like Cyclogenesis. Just I don't know if I really just like the sound a lot or what, but definitely adds like sort of space or something like that, or an organic feel. Let's see, and then snares and claps, pretty self-explanatory. The snare stays the same throughout the first drop, and then it's not really in the bridge, just the claps. And then in the second drop, there's a little added bit to the snare to make it a little more hybrid trap sound, if you will. I can play those layers real quick. And Rule 2 had the main snare, and then the second drop, I just want to switch it up a little bit, do the little sort of high-pitched flammy hit that's kind of popular with a lot of hybrid trap stuff. And of course, got a little reverse snare leading up into the main snare hit. Easy way to add a little bit of variation, a little bit of interest, which is, I think, another thing we talked about in Wraith.
Yeah, we talked about that a
So
lot in Wraith. It's a good way of adding like a good lead up to your snare. If you have something special you have in your snare that you want people to hear, it draws attention to it right before it hits.
yeah, and that's I guess some more tracks we break down. I think a lot, you might see a lot of the same things. The production aesthetics kind of carry over, using some of the same tricks or not really tricks, but the same methods.
Yeah. Wraith and Temple were not they weren't very they don't sound very similar, I guess, but they were very the way we made them was really similar in the mindsets we had, and like we used a lot of the same tricks and stuff, even though they are pretty different sounding songs.
So they both definitely had that big orchestral sound to them as well, and being like hybrid too. So there is that similarity, but they definitely sound pretty different. Let's see, the next group is the kick and the sub, and that is also pretty self-explanatory. I don't actually have any side chaining on the sub. I just have a enveloper on there, which kind of takes a little bit of the attack off the sub bass to give room for the kick, since the kick is very, very punchy and a little bit clicky, so it cuts through the mix pretty well just by itself.
What do you think? What are some of your tips for mixing like kicks and subs in terms of like trap? Because it can vary from genre to genre, but like trap in particular has like very specific like mixing things in terms of kick and a sub.
It does, and so I approach it differently depending on the track. Like something that's more like hybrid like this, I'd approach differently from, I don't know, some more, I guess, just trap or like more like hip hop trap. But I often do sidechain the kick, or sorry, I sidechain the bass to the kick I think I said that right. Sometimes I mix that up.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, when the kick hits,
Yeah.
the sub gets out of the way. Make that clear.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. But that's just a easy tip to get more space, and easy way to have, because otherwise the kick and the sub bass would be competing for space, and that's not necessarily always the case. There are other ways to do it. Like if you do want your sub to have that attack, you could high pass your kick so it's more of just the high frequencies, so the low frequencies aren't clashing. Embodied, actually, I was having problems mixing it until I did. I remembered, oh yeah, I should absolutely sidechain, and that made the kick and the bass a lot more clear.
Yeah.
But of course, it is difficult to get. I think especially the bass sounding right in a mix. I try to listen on a lot of different systems. So I'll listen on speakers, I'll listen on headphones, listen in the car. If I can, I'll listen in the studio environment, just to see how the bass sounds and kind of balance it. Of course, using reference tracks as well. Trying to get the bass to sound about the same as in a reference you like. That's a easy, or not necessarily easy, but a good way to balance things.
Yeah. Well, our ears are not very good at doing precise assessments of like low frequency sounds. So listening in like a studio environment or something where you can really like feel the level of the bass and like the lower tones of your mix are is something really good to do. And in terms of like the kick and sub kind of thing, like it really depends on the track, but like sometimes in like a more what I've noticed, what I've done in like a more trappy song instead of like an experimental kind of thing is that like your kick what if you were doing like a more trappy thing, your kick would more like a dubstep kick where it's more heavy, has a lot of like punch in the high end, whereas like an experimental stuff or like chiller stuff, it'd be like more subtle but punchy. But whatever route you decide to go, like a kick, especially in trap, needs to be loud and present, and you need to like know that it's hitting when it's hitting. And then it can't be like sitting underneath everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the kick is definitely a huge part of music like this, and well, a lot of music actually, but especially like trap and dubstep and this kind of hybrid genre of that. And then a lot of the stuff I like to, as you can probably tell, I like to have buses going on. So there's a bus for the kick because there are different layers for the kick, and a bus for the sub. But yeah, moving on, there's just a little group for the break, which is really just a little like tom fill and other things going on that hits right before the second drop. And I just have it bounced to one file. As you can see, there are other little FX I had going on here, and the MIDI region right here was for the toms. And that just sounds like this by itself. And I have it cut off right before the drop hits, so the sustain from the toms doesn't affect the rest of the drop, because if the toms were still sustaining while the kick hits, it would probably be really muddy, not that great sounding.
Yeah, it's really hard to work toms into a mix. I've been doing that a lot recently with the music that I'm working on. It's really difficult. You really have to like EQ it really, really nicely and like compress it pretty much perfectly in order to make it not muddy.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you have a lot of other stuff
Yeah.
going on, it can be a challenge. And then we get to the group I called Wobs, even though they're not exactly Wobs, but kind of like the bass sounds, the main sounds of the drop, which especially for the first drop were mainly rule of two. You can see I sliced them up a little bit to create some space in the track. Main sounds this little triplet wob, which Rule 2 mentioned earlier. Sounds like this. Another quick thing to note is that these bass sounds, these triplet wobs, I mean, I gotta stop calling them wobs. I sound okay. Anyway, while the triplets are playing, the bass, the sub bass, the trap bass is not playing. That's because they're already pretty bassy, and having them going on at the same time would probably be ridiculous, unless I wanted to high pass the wobs. I see, I did it again, man. And their bass sound was kind of similar to the triplets, but they sound like this by themselves. And they're cut up like that. They're kind of little accents to the main bass. And play that in context real quick. You can see there's a lot of space for the basses to hit and the sub bass, and kind of has like an ebb and flow to it, if you will, of movement.
Yeah, it really
which
does.
is always nice in a drop.
The drop in this track is very like start, stop, start, stop.
Yeah, I think that turned out really good. I definitely like doing that in a lot of tracks, having little breaks, or lots of variation, kind of keep you on your toes, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But is there anything you want to say about the stuff you did?
I'd probably just do an explanation of like how they were made. I believe the wobs, excuse my language, were made with, there was a Harmer patch, and it was basically what I did was just basically like I made a high unison bass, and then I did like a volume automation to give it a little bit of take the edge off the attack, and then the triplets with it. But the what gives it the tone and like the texture that it does is that I bounced it, and then I did different pitch sampling of it. Like I pitched it down an octave and then took different parts of that sounded cool, that I didn't have in the original sound, and then layered it on top. And then eventually I came up with like a thing that was like 4 layers. And then I distorted that a little bit, compressed it, and then sent it off to you. And then the other sound, that one did not turn out as good as what I had in the original, but that one is pretty much just completely reverb and distortion on like a saw wave. That's pretty much all it is.
Nice, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes simple stuff like that really works out. Like a lot of, I think a lot of like lead sounds here in trap are just heavily processed saw waves, which is really cool.
Yeah. 90% of all sound design is saw waves.
Sometimes it feels like it. It really does. I think in the second drop, actually, talk about a little bit more about the first drop real quick. There are a couple sounds I have which are massive patches as well. They sound like this. And especially this little pitch bend growl just comes in very small parts in the first drop, and it kind of teases the second drop where it's the main sound, the lead sound, and it definitely takes a bigger role in the second drop. I'll play that by itself real quick. You can see that it has some automation on it, automating some things in Massive to change the rhythm, automating the volume. That was probably for mixed reasons. And then, of course, you could hear leading up to I was automating the reverb. And what really gives this sound its really tonality and its I don't really want to say uniqueness, because it's not super unique or anything, but it's not just a straight massive patch, and it's mainly because of this ring shifter plugin. So without it, it just sounds like this. And yeah, I'll play it by itself. By itself, that just sounds like some massive patch you made in 5 minutes. It's not really that cool, but the ring shifter adds just so much to it. It entirely changes the sound. And these are settings for it. I'm actually not 100% sure about ring shifters. I'm not very knowledgeable. I meant to read up on them before, but very useful for experimental stuff like this. And I have this frequency exactly placed. So let's see. Yeah.
What's
So
a ring? Is that like ring modulation?
Sorta.
Frequency? Is it like that kind of? I'm completely unfamiliar.
Yeah, I really should have. Logic has a great manual. It's actually really cool, and it talks about this. Maybe I might just edit that in later, whatever. But so basically, what I'm doing is just using the frequency shifter and the ring shifter, and using that in a more musical way, where I have the frequency set to basically the same frequency as an E, basically the same frequency that the massive patch already plays on. It only sounds good played on E because of where the frequency is set, so it sounds like that on the E. And it sounds just weird and messed up when it's played on other notes. So yeah, and then of course other basses make more of an appearance, and then one of my favorite sounds in this track is the Skrilly stab, which of course is trying to sound like you know who. But that is also a massive patch, as you can tell. I didn't have Serum at the time, so massive is the go-to for crazy bass sounds. It just sounds like this, and it's actually sidechained to the snare. Yeah, it is sidechained to the snare, because it hits right when the snare hits, and that was very conflicting. So it's a lot smoother. That ducks out of the way of the snare, and you don't really lose any of the sound really, just because the snare really takes up that attack. It's the main focus. So you can see when that snare hit, the gain reduction kicked in. And I'm not going to go into too much detail with the sound, mostly because I made it a while ago and probably couldn't describe it too well. And then getting down into the God, there's so many tracks. 165. Jesus. What was I thinking? Getting into these, the FX. And so this little first group, the Special Effects 1, was a lot of the weird glitchy sounds, which are a little more present at the beginning, or you can hear them a little bit better. I actually like these a lot because I think I made most of these by just weird processing techniques, and then imported them in from whatever project that was into this, and they worked pretty well. And they just sound like this by themselves. And that's a little background fuzz, which can't really hear all that well, but definitely adds to the sound, kind of adds a little weird, I don't really want to say alien sound, but definitely some foreign, which complements, of course, the rest of what's going on.
That's a whole other thing we can talk about at the end, like the soundscaping in this track, because it's insane.
Oh yeah, we definitely talked about that. Like, we're kind of breaking this down vertically right now, if you will, and then after I talk about the rest of this FX, we can talk about it in the linear sense and sense of time and composition wise. And really, these other effects groups were 3 and 4 weren't anything too special. They were kind of your standard effects. Got some white noise and other more standard stuff going on. But in 2, there's some kind of interesting Foley, which is that was definitely yours. That's definitely Rule of 2's.
Yeah.
Oh, it does say Foley RO2, so that's a good indicator. And that just sounds like this by itself. And that also accents the wobs. Man, I said I wasn't going to say wobs. What am I doing? It accents the bass sounds that Rule of 2 did, which was actually some I noticed you do. May not a lot, but you've done sometimes that I like a lot. Sort of you have the main bass sound going on, and they're like Foley or other drum sounds that accent it, really add a lot to the sound.
Yeah, I really just take that from like other tracks that I've heard. Like I hear the concept of like percussion matching your rhythm of the bass is not really like a new thing, but like an artist like Isqua or Topi or I don't know, I call too many names, but other people like that, like other like grittier music, I liked how they took like their percussion and they added not only made their percussion partially Foley, which is more interesting than I think than just like cymbals or like a hi-hat, but they make it like match up with their bass and like accent it and like makes it a whole new layer that you can't really make with like a synthesizer, and it makes it sound more organic, which is what this track is really going for. So
yeah, definitely. And then we have another pretty big group is the ambience, which there's a lot of, as you could probably tell when listening to the track. Got several field recordings. 2 of these Rule of 2 sent me, or maybe more actually, but there's rain sounds, forest sounds, bird sounds, other water sounds. It should really, I mean, talk about soundscaping. Like that adds a huge range to the track, if you will. Like it makes it so much bigger, puts it in a huge space. It's kind of cool. Sort of all these layered background sounds almost stand by themselves as like their own little world, if you will, their own
Yeah.
little space.
That's the important part about soundscaping is like you don't go on, wherever you get your freesound.org or wherever you get your field recordings, or if you make them yourself. You can't just have like one and then like call that soundscaping. Like in this especially, like there's a world that's being built. Like it's supposed to be like eastern, like kind of like jungly, like you can like hear it raining, like the thunder. It's in like a jungle. There's like a temple kind of like that. It's not painting a picture in your mind. It's just like leaving you the opportunity to do it yourself. So with this, we have like the birds, which are in the jungle. We have the thunder. We have the rain, and then we have what else is there? I forgot the layers already. But yeah, there's all those
There's
different
so
things, and then
much.
we have all like the Eastern instruments, and it all like kind of blends together to build that the basis for like your imagination to do the rest.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Gotta have your impacts, of course. Going for more big orchestral stuff. They sound like this, and we also have this little audio file at the end which is actually bounced from a project I was working on a while ago that I don't think is ever gonna be finished because I just scrapped it for parts. So it's actually it's kind of interesting because it's never going to be finished, but pieces of the project are in Temple. There's some in upcoming tracks like Rift. So it took on a new life. It was reborn into the world as several parts to different tracks. So it's kind of beautiful if you ask me. But that just sounds like this. It plays at the end, at the very end actually, while nothing else is going on. There's one other sound I think I wanted to talk about. If I can find it real quick. And this was the other sound I was talking about. This little hit that plays after the end of the first drop. Which is kind of cool. Very cinematic sound that I bounced from another project I was working on, which really I should use that sound more or do something with that project. It's pretty cool. But that kind of contributes to the end of the first drop, kind of being like a more cinematic, not necessarily glitchy, but kind of change up at the very end that leads into the bridge very nicely.
Yeah, I believe that's the only sound, the only time that sound is played in the whole track, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Which
I
I
think
think is
it's
kind
a
of
really
cool.
good transition from the drop to the bridge because it's like it's electronic, so it fits into the drop, and then it has like the reverb and it carries into the bridge, and it's really awesome.
Thank you, thank you. But that is mostly everything, besides like the hi hats, I guess. But that's super self-explanatory. They're just hi hats.
Yeah,
Nothing really too special going on. They're more present, of course, in the second drop. But now we can talk about the track in a different aspect, and that was, of course, like composition wise. When I first had the idea for the track, when I first had the idea for the track, I wanted to have what is now the bridge be sort of the first part of it, the first verse, if you will, that led into a drop. But once into Rule of Two, he came with a different idea where the intro was kind of more ambient and then had sort of a build-up section instead of a verse that leads into the first drop, which I definitely think is a better idea. Makes a little more sense. It's not as
yeah. I think
disjointed.
if I remember correctly, the original you sent me was like really. It was only like 40 seconds long or something, but it was really ambient, and then there was like this like really subtle like melody going on in the background, and I thought it was really cool. So I thought that'd be like I just thought it'd be a cool idea to have like the ambient stuff in the beginning, just to set up like the temple theme, and then go into the drop, and then like expand part that you originally had.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you did have a lot of you definitely had strings going on too. I think I just
Probably.
um, used Spitfire once, or used the ones I had.
Yeah, yours are definitely better quality.
Hey, shouts to Spitfire though. Their libraries are really cool.
Yeah,
Especially
Spitfire's the shit.
Albion, their main or orchestral library. It has almost everything you need really to just get started. It has good strings, good brass, good woodwinds. In addition to that, it has a lot of cool synths and drums, and even has sort of aleatoric effects with weird piano and trumpet sounds, and also has a nice piano as well. So It's really a good
Yeah.
starting place. But yeah, definitely, if you guys are into that kind of stuff, check them out. But also, Spitfire does a very good educational discount as well, 30% off. So that's,
Did they really?
yeah, it's pretty
Ooh,
nice.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, oh, for sure. All right, so I guess we're done shouting out Spitfire.
Yeah.
Shout Spitfire.
Please don't sponsor us, but I mean, if you really want to, you could.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So we went through everything. Is that it? All 130 something?
165.
Oh, Jesus.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other layers to it, or any concepts, anything like that?
Just I think we went over a lot of like the concepts again in Wraith because the songs are really similar. But
Yeah,
just starting out with like the ambience in the beginning, setting up like the whole theme, and then we went into like the build up, the drop, which sets up like the electronic portion and all the bass instruments, and then we went into the bridge and then expanded on it with what you sent me with like the melodic stuff, just building more onto the theme, and then into the second drop where it all comes together and everything. And even just as to point out, just all that soundscaping that you hear, like especially at the end and in the after the first drop, all this soundscaping where it's just the ambience that's also going on in the drop. Like that's really important to have in the drop because it really makes the track really cohesive and it keeps it flowing.
yeah, for sure. I was about
And
to say
since
that.
there is like a huge difference between the electronic sounds in the drop and then like the strings in the like the bridge, and like in order to tie those two together, since they sound so different, the ambience is a really good way of doing that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I had to say.
Did someone drop something in the background?
Yeah, I think upstairs someone dropped something.
Okay, I mean, talk about Foley
Sorry.
samples though. But yeah, guys, that's really about all we were going to talk about. Let us know if you want to talk about anything else. If you have any questions about this track, feel free to leave a comment. If you want us to do another video about something, could be a tutorial, could be a certain sound, just let us know and we can get to it. But that's going to be it from us for right now. So take care.
See ya.